Hello and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. My name is Scott and today we have something truly special to show you. We have played The Outer Worlds. This video contains a whole lot of new gameplay and our impressions from our time with the upcoming RPG. We've been excited for a new game from famed developers Obsidian, Private Division and the original creators of Fallout for quite some time, and today we get to dive deep into what we played. As a quick disclaimer, Private Division paid for flights and accommodation in order for us to attend the Outer Worlds preview event, but this content is not sponsored in any way. All the footage you're seeing here was captured by us on a high-end PC during our roughly 1.5 hour session. It's also worth noting that the preview was conducted on a work-in-progress build, so any stats, quests, or other aspects are subject to change ahead of the game's release on October 25th. With that out of the way, let's jump into it. To set the scene, The Outer Worlds is set in a sci-fi future ruled by corporations. Humanity has traveled to the stars, terraforming new worlds to colonize. The Hope was one of the ships carrying hundreds of colonists to the new worlds. It was unfortunately lost after falling out of hyperspace, taking 70 years to reach the Halcyon system. By the time you're awoken by a scientist named Phineas, the planets of the system have become the property of the Board, a collection of corporations that own everything. It's a Wild West sci-fi frontier, and your miracle re-emergence from certain deep freeze serves as the catalyst for your adventure. Now, when you start the game as a new player, you'll get to create your very own space colonist, complete with their stats and attributes. We assume from the character screens we tinkered with that as a whole the experience will be quite familiar to veteran RPG players. During the time we spent with the game, we played as Dutch, a level 10 spacer with well-rounded skills, so we could dabble in a little of everything that the game has to offer. While we didn't get enough skill points to deeply dive into any specific specialties, there was ample opportunities to try out being a smooth talker, a stealthy melee specialist, or to wield guns like a sharpshooter. We'll be looking into the stats from a character building perspective a little later on, but we can say that the options are looking very promising. Once the game is out, we will have ample time to make detailed character builds and guides on specific playstyles, so we'd welcome you to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on that Outer Worlds content. Our entire gameplay session was based on the planet Monarch, one of the largest open maps in the game. The Outer Worlds takes place across a series of planets, each with an open section rather than an entire open world. More Knights of the Old Republic 2 than Fallout New Vegas. Previously, it's helped to make the areas you do play in feel more deliberate and handcrafted. So far, this approach seems like a wise decision for a new IP like the one Obsidian and Private Division have on their hands, focusing their ambition into the sections of the worlds you'll spend your time in. You may recognize the planet Monarch from footage shared recently during the E3 2019 presentation. We've highlighted that section previously in our own videos on the game, but with this new demo we were able to stray further from the beaten path. When starting, we were given free reign, and instead of retreading the steps of the E3 demo, we decided to branch out on our own. It's here where we can credit the writing for influencing our decision on what to do with our time in the Outer Worlds. After talking to Nyoka, we were set on our path. Nyoka is a companion that can be recruited by the player in their adventure. We quite deliberately know very little about her backstory currently, but her companion side quest we played revealed a little more to her character. We do know that she's tough, always keen for the hunt. Favoring big guns and loud fights, her signature move sees her blasting her foes after taking a swig from her hip flask. She's also quite distrusting, born from previous letdowns, and finds it hard to ask for help, but it was her endearing dialogue that drew us to pursue a companion quest that led us into her backstory and plenty of fights with fearsome fauna from Monarch. There's already interesting backstories emerging, so it seems like we'll have a bunch of lore to dive into come the release day for the characters, corporation, and worlds of the Halcyon system. Alongside Nyoka, our second companion was a woman named Bhavati. More reserved, we know a lot less about her, save from her penchant for melee weapons in combat. Her featured ability is a powerful electrical slam, damaging foes in close quarters. We don't know how many companions total will feature in the final release, but they'll be a large part of the way you play the game. We were told that they'll be able to aid in the way you play, as each has their own proficiencies, so who you choose or don't choose to bring on your adventures will be highly impactful. They'll also influence the stories you'll experience in the world. The quest we mentioned earlier offered by Nyoka is somewhat of a homecoming, entitled Star-Crossed Troopers. She was once part of a small hunter group, quickly banding together as a family of sorts. When the corporation pulled out of Monarch, her crew helped the inhabitants of the wild planet restore a society. With the group's members scattered or dead, she seeks to reconnect with the two left alive and collect the medallions they all held as a final honor. There's always a complication, and this one comes in the form of a manta queen that's taken up refuge in the caves they called home. We're glad this is the mission we chose to pursue, as it gave us a great taste of the game. What felt like a sizable trek through the wilds of Monarch turned out to be a small corner of the overall planet map. Neatly looping back, our journey took us to a remote station high above ground level, through plenty of marauders and beastly creatures alike. During our initial conflict with the beasts of Monarch, we received our first flaw, and our first good look at character progression. Flaws are a major part of the Outer Worlds character development. They represent a give and take linked directly to the way your character experiences the world. For instance, the first flaw we received was called herpetophobia. Its description reads, "After too many encounters with mantapillars and mantisaurs, you're not quite yourself when any of the manta family of creatures are attacking your party." In the character, it manifests as a permanent debuff, as -1 to dexterity, perception, and temperament while fighting these creatures. While you do get to reject it should it impact the way you're building your character, the trade-off is a bonus perk point. This simple engagement helps you shape your character's path through the world, and is a really interesting mechanic. We're excited to test these effects on a character over a full playthrough, maybe even intentionally seeking out flaws in order to play certain builds. We can't speak about flaws without diving into perks and stats though. When opening up your character, you're greeted with a slick summary page that explains your character at a glance. Your attributes are summations of the lengthy skill choices broken up into body, mind, and personality. While we're keen to dive into the detailed skill options and discuss how we feel about role-playing options in a deeper way soon, here's a quick look at what you can expect. Body is your strength and dexterity, affecting your melee damage and attack speed, carrying capacity, and reloadability. Mind covers your intelligence and perception, which will cover your use of guns, but also your ability to persuade, hack, and heal. Lastly, personality is the collection of charm and temperament, affecting your leadership abilities, relationships with the game factions, as well as your interactions with characters. You'll also have an aptitude, a small backstory for your character that you can select from what we'd assume to be a variety of options. Our pre-selected aptitude was Medical Technician, junior grade, with the bio explaining that prior to leaving Earth, we'd been an esteemed junior surgeon. You get a permanent buff for your choice, plus 1 medical in this case, helping round out your character build. This seems similar to picking traits in Fallout New Vegas, so it's something that we are keen on. The perk points you gain from leveling up and flaws are the icing on the cake of role-playing builds. Divided into 3 tiers, perks are a more direct way to make the character play the way you want. Extra health, sprint speed, vendor discounts, and niche options like science weapon damage can be found here. They're fairly grounded in the first 2 tiers, but the 3rd tier perks such as Boom Headshot fulfill the ridiculous fantasies you may have for your character. This one makes headshot kills explode, spilling damage onto nearby foes, perfect for a 6-shooter toting sharpshooter. But for the most part, it seems that the perks are rather stat-oriented as opposed to the novelty of many Fallout perks. Once again, it's worth highlighting that all the skills and perks are subject to change, but they seem to cover a lot of ground in making your spacer feel truly unique. Companions also have streamlined perk trees and skills that seem to auto-select upon level ups. Their perks are divided into 5 tiers, offering things like increased maximum health or character-specific buffs. On Nyoka, you can increase her damage to creatures and chance to successfully lie when partied with her. These companion buffs may be of drastic significance in certain scenarios. Simply having the right people in your party could mean the difference between a suave negotiation or an all-out gunfight. Their character pages also allow you to change the behavior of your companions, from the weapons they favor to how aggressive or defensive they are. It's nice to have a little extra control of these aspects to ensure they play the way you envision your squad and their roles. With our perk points allocated and squad ready to roll, we pushed further into the mountains. As we ventured through the world towards our goals, we uncovered plenty of small marauder checkpoints, and we met the Corporate Compliance Crew, colloquially known as C3s. The C3s are an independent crew, mercenaries who speak more like lawyers than bandits. We found their knowledge and enforcement of contractual obligations quite amusing, managing to do their job for them through the quest and scoring a sweet payout as a result. Assaulting the station in the mountains proved to be the biggest combat challenge, but also the best opportunity to see how encounters could be tackled in different ways. When we first strolled up, we opted for an all-out assault, sniping from a nearby outcrop while our companions rushed in. After clearing the exterior, we went inside to seek assistance from Huram, an old acquaintance of Nyoka. After clearing out the enemies by force, we stumbled upon a terminal, highlighting the fact the main room can be isolated to remove all the oxygen. Sneaking through may have yielded us the opportunity to clear a large force of bandits without a shot, which is a cool option to have. Conversely, if we reached the C3 barracks instead of pushing on direct to the outpost, we may have gotten our own mercenary force to take the base with. The focus on minor choices of how to play, who to talk to, and where to go paints a great picture for a variety of playthroughs possible. Armor and loot are a key part of the experience, and we picked up 4 or 5 different options while liberating the remote mountain outpost. Several pieces were recolors of the armor we initially had, representative of the factions who it was taken from. We did find a heavier set of the Rocketeer-style armor, adding extra protection and a more flashy frame. From the gear enemies and NPCs were wearing, we'd expect to see more variability in armor once we travel further to the other worlds and corporations. We did, however, find a large variety of weaponry to use. Between the pistols, sniper rifles, assault rifles, and blades, the game gives you plenty of options to tackle combat. With 4 active weapon slots to switch between on the go, we found ourselves opting for a sniper to open up the fight, a laser rifle for when enemies close the distance, plus swords and pistols for those pesky foes who get up in your face. I really appreciated the different visual styles each weapon type had, from long polished wood rifles with gold trims to sleek futuristic laser weapons. Gunplay felt functional, fairly smooth, and easy to land shots with on PC, but what of time dilation, the Outer Worlds' answer to VATS? When triggered, you enter a super slow motion briefly, giving you time to line up shots on weak points of foes. It also gives you some simple information about enemies you target, and tells you what your hit would do should it find its target. Having the option to blind, stagger, maim, execute, or weaken armor just by highlighting where you want to shoot opens up great tactical opportunities for fights. Weakening the toughest enemy with that one opening shot or picking off troublesome mobs becomes a strong strategy for the way you approach combat. The slow motion feature takes a fairly functional shooter base and gives RPG fans time to scope out and tackle encounters their way. At the culmination of this story's progress on Halcyon, we were tasked with heading off-world to find the living members of Nyoka's crew. This wrapped up our time in the preview build, and despite not facing much in the way of the game's core story and major decisions, we left fairly engaged with the story we experienced. The characters we met and spoke with all had interesting things to say, and the dialogue options you could choose when lying or persuading proved to be amusing and varied. It's tough to say from this 1 hour how the core story will shape up, but we had a good time with the slice of the Halcyon system we set out in. When speaking to some others who attended the preview, many said they'd not even come across this mission nor the remote base in their time. Many opted for pursuing open world exploration, story missions, or diving deep into the town of Fallbrook. We headed there briefly to check a city hub out, bearing an underlying tone similar to an all too familiar wretched hive of scum and villainy. The town is run by the local crime boss, Catherine Marlin. She maintains a fragile order in the town, likely someone you don't want to make an enemy of if you're planning on operating on Monarch in relative peace. We barely scratched the surface of what this town has to offer, but after the zaniness of being tasked with liberating a Borst business, we're excited to see more of how this outlaw town works. Before we wrap things up, it's worth highlighting the general presentation of the Halcyon system. Running on a high-end PC, the graphics looked excellent for the most part, with only minor texture pop-ins or iffy textures. Characters themselves looked great too, facial animations look better than they have in the past, but occasionally you do get those all too janky animations during dialogue. The part that really impressed us, however, is the aesthetics of the world, from the hollow signs with embellished lettering to the hand-drawn advertisements straight out of the early 1900s. Even the fictional movie poster for Terror on Monarch looks fittingly futuristic yet retro. The world we saw was cohesive and engaging in its design, and we hope the final product lives up to the vision we saw in our time with the game. At the close of our time with the Outer Worlds, we were itching to play more. We had all sorts of crazy ideas for how we'd like to play the game: sweet-talking but useless, pulpy 1950s sci-fi hero, or slick corporate agent, chiefly among them. While we didn't get much more of the core story, the worlds feel authentic, and that's almost more important in our eyes. When wandering through towns, you hear murmurs of smuggling runs to Stellar Bay and the strange family who lives there, and this is exactly what we want out of the spaces we explore: intrigue and depth. There's a lot of potential in what we've played, but it will all depend on how well the team at Obsidian and Private Division cross the finish line. We can't wait to give this game the full FudgeMuppet treatment, and we'll have more gameplay and content to share ahead of the game's launch. Keep an eye on the channel for Outer Worlds builds, lore, and more when it releases on PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC via Xbox Game Pass or Epic Games Store, October 25th. My name is Scott, thanks so much for watching, and please do let us know if you have any further questions about our time with the Outer Worlds in the comments below. Thanks again, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again very soon.